right now, sitting at number 10. They could have a 6-win Michigan State team coming up. The big one, obviously, is Michigan. It'll be interesting to see where the committee has them ranked, and, of course, a Big Ten championship game, too. So if you're Urban Meyer in Ohio State, you know, licking your wounds in the bye week after that loss, you're sitting in pretty good position right here in the first rank.
All right, let's see how everything looks at the top. David alluded to it. Last year, Alabama had 59 of the 61 AP votes. They were number 2. Last year, or this year, they have all 60, and they have the blessing of the committee, at least for week 1. The Crimson Tide start off number 1 in the college football playoff rankings. That hasn't always boded well necessarily in the playoff. Just behind Clemson. Have we seen this movie before in the playoffs?
I feel like we've seen that
on
Alabama,
repeat. Know the credits.
Clemson, 1, 2. Let's see who's at number 3. The next 2 could be very interesting. LSU, one-loss LSU, lost on the road at Florida, but that great strength of record, sitting there ahead of an undefeated team.
Yeah, and again, that was what I was waiting on. I wanted to see what they gave them credit for. They're giving them credit for an Auburn win, a Miami win. Even though those teams now are not ranked and they have 3 losses, they're still giving them credit for beating them early on. And this LSU team, if they can correct their passing, sort of like the Kentucky team we just talked about, if they can get a better passing game, look out Alabama in 5 days.
And you know what this means, too. Now in the 5th year of the playoff, more than half of the teams in the initial rankings from the SEC. Let's see who's at number 4. One would assume Notre Dame, and it is. The Fighting Irish, a tough road test coming up against Northwestern, a dangerous Northwestern team on Saturday night. So those are the teams that start in the top 4. LSU should know that no number 3 team in the initial rankings has ever made the playoff.
Why bring up old stuff, Reese? That's not what they wanted to hear. Not what they wanted to hear.
Well, at least Notre Dame was 3 last year, and that is followed by Michigan and Georgia at 5 and 6 now. So the Wolverines, look, the Wolverines are in great position now. They've got everything in front of them. They have Penn State this weekend. They've got Ohio State at the end, and Georgia too, starting with this weekend against Kentucky. So, Kirk, does this top 4 and the top 6 look about the way you anticipated?
Yeah, that's exactly the 6 that I had. I had LSU there at 3, just a little bit ahead of Notre Dame, and Michigan at 5, Georgia 6. And I think with Michigan, you just touched on, they're on this revenge tour, and they've taken care of business. You got to give them credit with Wisconsin, Michigan State on the road. They get Penn State this week. They still have Ohio State and Columbus. If they keep winning, Big Ten championship. So you're right. Everything is in front of them, and they control their own destiny. Georgia's got to be careful this week, as we've been talking about with that trip into Kentucky. LSU and Notre Dame, somewhat of a moot point because of the game this Saturday in Baton Rouge. If they lose that game, they will go to the back of the line. If they win that game, it becomes very interesting, because what would they do with Alabama if Alabama were to lose a close game to LSU, as dominant as they have been against lesser opponents? How far down would Alabama potentially lose? So you don't want to just jump to conclusions about any games, especially anytime you got to go into Death Valley. But yeah, this for me, week 1, this pretty much laid out exactly how I thought it would go.
And guys, this is all going to change, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
you're wrong.
In the 4 rankings the last 4 years,
thing, Dave.
8 of the 16 teams in the initial ranking in the last 4 years of the playoff have lost the first or second game after the initial ranking. So there's going to be a lot of shakeup. So don't get too crazy about this. I think what's interesting about this, though, it talks about eye test, with Alabama being number 1, because Texas A&M is the only ranked team that they've beaten on their schedule. But when you've watched them play, guys, they've just been so dominant. The way they play offense, and Tua's a Heisman front run. They've scored 28 points in the first quarter in 3 games. This, to me, has looked like Nick Saban's best team. So maybe a bit of an indicator in terms of where the committee, how they're prioritizing.
And the thing I love about the playoff era is now, because of the resume issues, Ohio State and Michigan will be the biggest Northwestern fans on the planet, because they need Northwestern to knock off Notre Dame, because later on, if Northwestern gets to the Big Ten championship game, that's going to be another resume builder, so that sets up a situation that whoever comes out of the Big Ten gets into the playoff. And so as we look at these resumes and moving forward, who got games left, you start rooting for that other team that you have to face. Ohio State wants Michigan to win their games. Michigan wants Ohio State to win their games, because they need resume points.
Well, Michigan and all those teams in the top 6, who cares? It doesn't really matter. All you got to do is take care of your business. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. They're in the driver's. I mean, LSU and Alabama are obviously going to play each other. Everybody, all you got to do is win. I mean, it doesn't matter. If you're an Irish fan and you're sitting there going, this sucks. How are we not? We're undefeated. It doesn't matter.
run the table, win your ball games. You're sitting in the college football.
But I do think that's important. Notre Dame, I think, has to run the table. We talked about this last week. Can Notre Dame afford a loss and still get in? This past weekend, you saw Stanford, Virginia Tech, and USC lose.
I think it depends on how they look, and that'll play out over the last month of the season, Kirk.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame is more of a wild card this year than what they were last year when they still had to go down to Miami, and we were all kind of holding our breath to see how that game might go. Other than an upset this week against Northwestern, you look at that schedule, and they're going to be heavily favored in every game that they play. So they start to become a real player here and controlling their own destiny. And if we just for now, Reese, you do hypothetical things, if you assume that you have no, I'm just saying. If we assume that Alabama and Clemson. If we assume that Alabama and Clemson, and if you go with Notre Dame getting in, that eliminates one of the Power Five, another Power Five conference champion. Now you're talking about Washington State up there at number 8. You got Michigan out there as a Big Ten champ. You got the Big 12 with Oklahoma trying to climb up there. It becomes a really big debate down the road. If those top three or the 4 teams that are up there right now with Clemson and Alabama and Notre Dame, if they were to win out, you imagine the race for that last spot and the arguments and the debates of who would get that final spot. Obviously, if Michigan wins out, they would be in the driver's seat. But if they stumbled, then it opens up a big argument for who that 4th spot would be.